Good day, fish tankers. Can you have too much filtration? Some people will tell you there's no such thing as too much of a good thing. The more filters, the better. You can never over filter a tank. Before we get to that question, please remember, if you haven't already, please take advantage of Jungle Aquatics, who reached out to me and offered the South African viewers of this channel a discount. Just go to www.jungleaquatics.com and at the checkout just type in the discount code, which is my name in caps as you see on the screen, Drux. Or you can simply use the link that I'll post underneath in the description and pin a post for, and you can get 10% off a once-off purchase at jungleaquatics.com, one of South Africa's biggest online aquatic retailers. And thank you for all the channel support. Without you guys, this wouldn't be possible. And I know a lot of you sit overseas in the US, in the UK and in India and everywhere. So it's unfortunately they don't ship out of South Africa, but if we keep growing that channel, that could maybe change and we could get a deal for you guys as well. So take advantage of a discount. Now, can you have too much filtration? That is the question. I am of the opinion that you can. Do you want to discuss the question further? Then stick around. Now, before we answer the question of can you or can you not have too much filtration, I'm of opinion that you can. Let's just go and grab that camera and take a quick look at what I have in my aquariums. Okay guys, let's go look at what I do have in my aquariums. Now here is about an 8-gallon cube, and there you can see we've got a tiny little internal power filter, just a sponge for media. And that kicks out about 200 liters of water per hour. And if I move around and focus in there at the back, you can see there is a little tiny sponge filter bubbling away. How do you calculate the flow rate for a sponge filter? I honestly don't know. Let me know if you know. And then here, moving on to the 29-gallon, you can see there is a larger sponge filter bubbling away. And if I walk around, and there way at the back, way at the back, maybe I can go in from there, you can see there's some flow coming out, but I'll have to go around the curtain, and there you can see it goes through a spray bar. And if I can perhaps zoom out, it's sitting there in the corner. There's an internal power filter that works at about 650 liters per hour, but this particular one is 600 liters per hour, but I've turned the flow quite substantially down to about half of that. Otherwise it's just too strong for the tank, you get too much flow. Right, moving on, let's go downstairs to the big boy tank. Right, let's just take a look what we have on here. And here you can see, I call it the 75-gallon because you like standard stuff. But, you know, it's more like 65-ish gallons. There you can see at the back, there's an internal power filter. And that one runs at 650 liters an hour. And it doesn't have any flow control, so it's on at full blast. There's a large sponge filter at the back. Once again, I wonder if somebody clever can tell me how to calculate the flow rate from a sponge filter. And then if I go around the tank, here at the back is a Tidal 55 filter, and that kicks out about 1,000 liters an hour. Now if I turn around, we go to this 5-gallon puffer tank. It's got this tiny little sponge filter in the back. And it's always just had this little sponge filter and nothing else. And it was perfectly working well, but I've tried the experiment with a plenum, which of course is a slow moving under gravel filter. You can see there, just bleeding off some air into that. It just runs at a trickle. So that's what we have in here for the 3P puffers. And you can sort of see, if we look around at the tanks, what the type of fish are what I keep. The biggest fish on this tank There's some juvenile polgaramis. There's a big Siamese algae eater at the back. You'll see him there, or her there. There's a big koi angel. She likes that spot. She comes out when it's feeding time. And there's a couple of sort of three clown noaches that are nowhere near full size, but they are a substantial size as well. And then all the tetras and that little apistogramma. So yeah, we've got some larger fish in as well, along with the smaller ones. And the other tank, mostly smaller fish. Biggest fish in the 29-gallon of a diamond tetras. And then obviously in the cube, it's more like the betta and some nano fish. Okay, so that's what I've got running on my aquariums, and it works pretty well for me. So those are my tanks and what I use in my tanks for the type of fish that I keep. Why do I think you can sometimes have too much filtration? I think sometimes we get obsessed because filtration is probably the most important tech part of our aquariums, and it's a very interesting subject, and there's so much about it out there, so much info, and we aquarium keepers, we fish keepers, we aquarists, we like to absorb information and analyze and integrate that. It just seems to attract certain kind of people with that mindset, does Barbie. But I think you can have too much filtration, and the effects of that can be twofold. The one is it can actually be harmful, and the other is it can maybe just be wasteful on your resources and your finances. Now let's start with when can too much filtration be harmful to your fish. Now along with filtration comes the issue of water flow, because all filters, from a sponge filter, an air-driven filter, is very difficult to quantify, to these powerful powerhead sort of pumped internal filters and canister filters and sumps. They all have to return the water to the tank, and that creates flow. Now not all fish like a lot of flow. For instance, goldfish, fancy goldfish, they don't like a lot of flow. They don't like being blown around the tank. And then we can go on to other fish, longfin varieties like angelfish, also don't like a lot of flow. Angels don't like the water blasting out all over the tank. And another good example besides angelfish would be bettas, also another type of fish that doesn't like a lot of flow. And their closely related family, gouramis, also not fond of being blasted around the tank. Now bettas, gouramis, they don't produce a lot of waste. However, if you have got something like goldfish or angelfish, especially goldfish, they produce a lot of waste. So you need substantial filtration, but you don't need all that flow. Now, I've seen goldfish in tanks like this one where I've been at a restaurant that you see in your screen right now. Not this particular tank, because this one is actually okay, but they would have these internal power filters like the ones you see there at the side of the aquarium, just blasting out, and in that cichlid tank that they have as well. And the flow would be so bad, all the fish would be stuck in a corner. Now this tank is 6 foot long, so that's not the issue in this particular tank, but I've seen tanks where the flow is so much, and your telltale sign is the fish will either be battling, swimming against the flow, almost like an aquatic hamster on a wheel, or they'll be all sitting and huddled in a corner to try and get away from that flow. So that long term is definitely harmful to a fish. It doesn't give them a nice life, and it will limit their lifespan. But what do you do if you've got a messy thing that eats a lot, that needs substantial filtration in terms of media? Maybe you need a canister filter or a sump or something like that, or a big hang-on back, but they don't like a lot of flow. What do you do if you have big filters but you need to lessen the flow? Well, first thing, as you can see there on the power filter on the aquarium over there, I've turned down the flow to about half of what it is, because the filter, it's actually too powerful for the tank, but it does have a decent amount of media. I find that's a sort of a design flaw in many internal power filters, too little media as opposed to the pump size. The pump is too strong when the media is too little. But I simply just turn the knob down and I half the flow. So that's one way to lessen flow. Another way is, like you can see, like I did here on my big tank, that internal power filter, it goes through a nozzle, so it blows out a jet, but I put it so that it blows from the back of a tank to the front. And you can also see with hang-on back here, it's also at the back, as the name indicates, and it moves the water from the back of the aquarium to the front. So the water flow deflects against the front glass, and then it creates a sort of a circular flow back, and that way you still got powerful filtration but not so much flow. If I were to put that hang on back or the internal power filter on the end of aquarium and make it blow across the length of the aquarium, I'm going to have much more flow. So that's one way of reducing flow on larger filters while still having that filtering capacity. So that's the thing that in the case of many fish species, too much filtration causes too much flow that can cause harm. So if you need a big filtering capacity, rather deflect the flow in some way. And I find the best is to just put the position of a filter that it goes from the back to the front of a tank and deflects on the front glass and not over such a long distance. And that helps quite a bit. You can even put some hardscape in front of the outlet to deflect the flow. So that is one way that I find you can use to get to a solution if you have too much flow, if you can't just simply use less filtration or smaller filtration. Now, the other thing where it's not necessarily harmful, but it becomes wasteful is, let's say, for example, you've got a tank and you have on it, you have a hang-on back and you have an internal power filter, plus you have a canister filter. And if you have overstocked Malawi cichlids that grows to a substantial size and you have to overstock the tank to limit aggression, that's going to be fine. And they don't, and with all the rockery and so even the flow is probably still going to be okay. But let's say you just have an ordinary community tank like that with, tetras or mollies and platies and so on, and you have all that filtration on. And guppies is another fish that doesn't like too much flow. But let's say you've got that and the flow is not the issue, but you've got a couple of small fish in there and you've got all this filtration. It's not going to be harmful, right? So in that sense, now you don't have too much filtration. But here's something to think about. The aerobic bacteria on that filtration system can only grow to an extent that the waste products that the fish put in the water can feed them. So if you have only a moderate amount of fish and those small fish, and you've got all of that filtration on it, assuming that they're fine with the flow and everything like that, your filter bacteria, the colonies, are only going to grow to as much as what is needed to neutralize the food, which is the ammonia and then also the nitrite in the water, that what we need the aerobic bacteria for. So it's going to grow to a certain extent, but all your filters will be colonized with smaller bacteria colonies. And if you only had, let's say, 1 or 2 of those filters instead of 3 or 4, then it would be more than sufficient space on the filter media to house all those bacteria colonies that you've now got spread out across all those different filters. So it doesn't do any harm, but it does use electricity. We're more conscious about that in South Africa because we've got these power outages and we run at least partially some of our filtration systems on AC/DC air pumps or small little inverter batteries and so on. So for me, I'm conscious about my power consumption. So I don't want to consume more power than I need to. So yes, that is not going to harm your fish in the example that I've named, but you are going to use more electricity than you need to, and you're going to spend more on filters than you need to. I always say, take the filter capacity that you need and then you divide it by 2 filters. I like using 2 filters in each tank at least, because then you can it's always a way to instantly cycle another tank, and you protect yourself against breakage. If one filter breaks down over a weekend, the tank's still going to be okay until you can replace the other one instead of just having one big one. Guys and girls, fish keepers, please tell me in the comment section, what's your opinion? Is it possible to have too much filtration? The consensus is no, it's not. These are the 2 reasons why I think you can in fact have too much filtration. And remember to smash that like button if you find the content useful. I think there are certain applications, if you have like Joey DIY does, if you have a tropical pool there and you have huge fish, Oscars and King Kong parrots and arowanas, and if you even chuck in red-tailed catfish and the reticent sharks, if you have that sort of setup, like a higher fish rescue for instance, you will reach a point where you have too much filtration, but it's almost impossible because you can have a far more filtration for that sort of fish, but most of us don't keep that fish. But that's it from me, guys. Please remember to subscribe, and until I see you again, keep taking good care of those domestic denizens of the deep.